Did you know there are famous women on magazine covers in Resident Evil? And what about the bugs left behind in Resident Evil that only hardcore players noticed? The moment is now. The video is super cool. You're going to love it. Let's get into the video.
Resident Evil.
Marvin Branagh is a respected officer of the Raccoon City Police Department, known for being well-informed about everything happening in the station. In the early hours of September 29th, he encounters Brad Vickers, who has turned into a zombie. When Brad murmurs sorry, Marvin hesitates, lowering his weapon, but is bitten moments later.
Sorry.
Wounded, he retreats inside the station. Marvin likely believed Brad regained consciousness for a brief moment. Later that same night, Marvin is found by Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Despite their offers to help, he refuses, saying he doesn't want to slow them down. Before parting, he informs Claire that her brother has traveled to Europe.
He's on vacation. Europe, I think. Left weeks ago.
Marvin might have been a high-ranking officer in the Bureau of Operations, as he was stationed in the West Office and was part of the chain of command above Leon S. Kennedy, a rookie officer in Resident Evil 2. Being so efficient at his job, you might not have noticed, but there's a poster on the wall featuring Marvin as Employee of the Month. Have you ever seen it? In the 2019 remake, players get more insight into what Marvin endured before the protagonists arrived in the city. As a zombie, Marvin is faster than most other zombies, but can be killed with a single shotgun blast to the head. In the original Resident Evil 2, it's never shown how Marvin got bitten. This detail was added in the Resident Evil 3 remake, as the events of Resident Evil 3 chronologically take place before Resident Evil 2. If you thought this detail was something simple that everyone has already noticed, let's see if you've caught what I'm about to show you. In the classic Resident Evil 3 for the PlayStation 1, there's that moment when Jill gets infected by the powerful and sometimes irritating Nemesis.
Stars.
At this point, we take control of Carlos for a while as he searches for the antidote to save her. Now, pay close attention to this scene in the game and see if you notice anything strange. If you didn't catch it, let me explain. Before we activate the lever to drain the water, you can see two white containers clearly highlighted on the screen. However, after completing the puzzle and getting the vaccine medium, the containers mysteriously disappear without any explanation. It's a subtle detail that I believe few people noticed during their gameplay. And no, you can't even blame the hunters for drinking it. I think this is already worth a like and your subscription to the channel, don't you? But don't leave the video yet. There are even more juicy curiosities coming up. Stay tuned. Back in the days of Resident Evil 3, do you think anyone imagined that the fourth game was already in the works? Well, Capcom probably knew, or at least had plans to release the next installment, considering the franchise's massive success. For the more attentive fans, they left a subtle hint hidden in the game. Early in Resident Evil 3, we come across the Grill 13 diner. You probably remember it. It's where Nemesis shows up, and you have to decide whether to blow up the kitchen or escape to the basement. I always chose to blow everything up. After all, Nemesis drops the Eagle Parts A, which you can combine with your pistol. But here's the curious detail. If you step outside the diner and look up, you'll see a billboard with an ad for Biohazard 4. Plus, on a nearby wall, there's another poster showing the same message. This happened years before Resident Evil 4 was even a thing. And as you might already know, but it's worth mentioning, Biohazard 4 is the Japanese title for Resident Evil 4. This little detail in the scenery ended up being a spoiler of sorts for a game that wouldn't be released until 6 years later. It's common for game developers to leave their personal touches or tributes during a game's development, adding details that reflect their preferences. In Resident Evil, for instance, it's clear that the creators are huge fans of the band Queen, as several references to the group can be found throughout the games. The most obvious reference is on Chris's jacket and Claire's outfit, both emblazoned with the phrase, "Made in Heaven." This is the title of Queen's final album, released in 1995.
My heart.
But the nods don't stop there. In Resident Evil Code Veronica, Claire's jacket also features the name of another song from the same album, Let Me Live, the third track on the record. And there's more. Billy's tattoo in Resident Evil 0 wasn't randomly chosen either. If you look closely, it reads Modern Love. But in this case, it's clearly a reference to the song by David Bowie, released in 1983 on the album Let's Dance. I couldn't find any direct connection between the Resident Evil producers and David Bowie, but I believe it might be related to Billy's hairstyle and Bowie's, as there's a noticeable similarity if you take a closer look. The game Resident Evil 0 is set in 2002, and Billy was 26 years old at the time, while David Bowie was around 55. Maybe Billy was a fan of David Bowie. What do you think? With so many connections, it's hard to believe this wasn't intentional. It seems like this album might have been a frequent soundtrack while the developers were working on Resident Evil. Speaking of the beloved Resident Evil 3 classic from the 90s, there's a fun little detail near the end of the game, right before you face Nemesis in his final form. That moment where you stock up your inventory with everything you'll need. If you pay close attention, there's a Playboy magazine sitting right there on the table in the save room. That's right, a Playboy. Specifically, it's the June 1989 edition featuring Kimberly Conrad, a magazine for the cheeky boys out there. Depending on your age or interests back then, maybe you'd even come across this issue before. I had no idea about this until I researched it. I'd never noticed it myself. Now, every time you play the classic Resident Evil 3, you'll probably spot that magazine. I highlighted this Easter egg here because there's always a fair number of people who decide to pause the video and Google it, right? But hang tight, the video's almost over, so stick around until the end, okay? You know what I mean. I still remember the first time I played Resident Evil Code Veronica on the Dreamcast. It was an incredible experience, and to this day, many fans are hoping for a remake of this classic. Early in the game, we're introduced to Rodrigo Juan Raval, a character Claire tries to help throughout the story. This is worth mentioning because of an interesting detail in the original Dreamcast version, which also made its way into the ports for other consoles. In an area at the back of the mansion, near a cargo elevator, you'll find scattered crates and barrels. If you use a weapon with a first-person scope, you might notice something strange. Rodrigo Juan Raval himself, seemingly stuck in the environment. It's unclear whether Capcom placed him there intentionally as an Easter egg, or if it was just a programming glitch. Most likely, it was a bug, as Rodrigo stands frozen like a statue, completely non-interactive. So, did you ever notice this before? If not, it's worth checking out the next time you play Code Veronica. Just remember, this bug only exists in the Dreamcast version. Resident Evil 4 is undoubtedly one of the most beloved games in the franchise. And who doesn't remember Hunnigan? She's the mission coordinator for the FOS, a secret US government agency, and is considered the most reliable agent in the organization, trusted by both her colleagues and superiors. Throughout the game, Hunnigan and Leon maintain regular contact via video calls. Leon even flirts with her at one point.
Returning home.
You did it, Leon.
Thanks. You know, you're kind of cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
May I remind you that you're still on duty.
Story of my life.
And let's be honest, Hunnigan is definitely very attractive. But here's a fun fact. While playing, it seems like Hunnigan is coordinating the mission from the US while Leon is out in Europe. However, when someone modifies the game's camera, you can actually see that the two characters are in the same environment, standing quite close to each other. In this case, the distance is just an illusion created by the game. Did you already know about this detail? I hope you had a fantastic Christmas and wish you an amazing 2025. But I also encourage you to be thankful for the year 2024. Personally, my health has been very poor for over a year, and I have plenty of reasons to thank God for being here. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who watched the video up to this point and who is subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much. I'm leaving 2 more videos for you to check out, and may Jesus Christ bless you.